than Muhammad did. So all the more you should believe in Joseph Smith, not Muhammad. Muhammad came up with a little passage here and a little passage there over a period of 23 years. But I want to address Manu's other point, namely that Muhammad was, he had such a good character. And he said, this is the difference. Because our question was, why should we believe in Muhammad over Joseph Smith?
Right.
If Manu had to explain this to someone, how would he explain it? And he said, there is a difference, namely that Muhammad was recognized as a really good guy. Well, I'll read you some of the witnesses of Joseph Smith. Joseph was a prophet of, this comes from a woman named Emily Partridge Young. She says, Joseph was a prophet of God and a friend of man. His was a noble character. All who knew him can testify to that assertion. Everyone who knew Muhammad can testify to the fact that he had, yes, everyone who knew Joseph Smith can testify to the fact that he had a noble character. He was all that the word gentleman would imply. Pure in heart, always striving for right, upholding innocence, and battling for the good of all. If I didn't know better, I would assume that came from Sahih al-Bukhari in a description of Muhammad.
Now, Manu, we're going to let you finish, and let me remind you, you have a unique opportunity here. You, being a Muslim, can now proselytize thousands by explaining to them why Muhammad should be accepted as a prophet when Joseph Smith is not. We've heard what you've said so far. Please complete the picture for us.
What Muslim show allows Christians to come and proselytize? What Muslim show allows Christians to come on there and proselytize? But we will.
We're giving Manu some free airtime. Go ahead, Manu.
Actually, Quran's position is that really it's God who will guide whoever He wants. And the way I've understood it is that if somebody has a right judgment, and if they're fair-minded, God will draw them to Himself, and He will guide them, and they get stronger in faith, and they grow. The reason, last night somebody made a comment, they said, why did it take him 20 years to understand this book? The reason is that it's the same example. A first-day Christian or first-week Christian is not the same as the Pope. So this book, if you contemplate in it, and if you read it, different parts, it's a coherent message. The message is that has always been a theology or a religion gets established in a community. Once established, it's very hard to uproot it. A messenger is sent by God to preach to that community if they have gone astray from the right path. Usually that messenger is going to be opposed or they're going to be rejected. Almost every single time, and the only messenger who was not was Jonah. And that's a very subtle point, but that's the only point that Quran says, that all the messengers more or less were rejected except the group that Jonah went to. So if you look at all these subtle things, if Muhammad didn't want the glory of God, he wanted his own glory, he wouldn't have been able to put together all these subtle points in the Quran. And the only person who can convince you of it is God, and the only person who can really help you is God if you be fair-minded and read this book without distortion and with right judgment.
So Manu, your argument is that the only reason that any atheist, secular person not committed to any religion, or anyone with a fair mind, the only reason that they should accept Muhammad as a prophet over Joseph Smith is that the Quran is so subtle and has so many wonderful, coherent intricacies, and apparently you're implying that the Book of Mormon does not, and therefore Muhammad's a prophet and Joseph Smith is not. Is that your argument?
Since I'm not really familiar, I've never read the Book of Mormon, I cannot comment on it. But
well, then if that's your argument, though, if you haven't read the Book of Mormon, and that's your argument, then you do not know if Joseph Smith is a prophet or not. If that's the only basis, the only criterion upon which you are differentiating Muhammad's claim to prophethood and Joseph Smith's claim of prophethood, and you have not read the Book of Mormon, then according to what you're telling us, then Joseph Smith may be a prophet.
In order to be, as a secular person, one should be fair-minded and say that I have to investigate every religion, and then, based on reasoning, a careful study and analysis, would reject it or accept it. However, since we're talking about Christianity and Islam, I haven't gone anything further than Islam to see all the other people. So that's
Okay, well, Manu, I know we really do like you, and we like to talk with you and interact and give you time, but for time's sake, that's basically your argument, that Muhammad is a prophet, and it is mainly because of the miracle of the Quran, and that's what differentiates him from, say, Joseph Smith, or the fellow who started the Ahmadiyya sect, or whoever else Islam would claim as a false prophet. That's basically your argument, is that right?
That is correct. The Quran also presents that challenge. It says, bring 10 chapters like Quran, and if you don't, fear the fire. That's
Okay.
the Quran challenge.
Okay, Manu. Now realize we've given you a great opportunity here to tell the world why they should believe in Muhammad as a prophet. And thank you so much for calling. And we hope to hear from you again very soon. I want some commentary on Manu's argument, and then we have to go to the next caller for time's sake. Thank you, Manu, and good night. Brother David, would you like to comment on what appeared to me, this is just my personal opinion, a very, very weak argument? If I was a secular person, I would say, what kind of argument is that?
What part were you referring to?
Well, I mean, his whole argument, the entire argument of Manu, that we should accept Muhammad instead of Joseph Smith is because he brought the Quran, and the Quran is so beautiful. And then I asked him, well, what about the Book of Mormon? And he says, well, I don't know, I haven't read it. This is the only reason that someone should accept Muhammad, just because of the beauty and the coherence of the Quran?
Let me tell you. Well, let's briefly talk about the reaction of people who actually heard Muhammad when he was preaching, when Muhammad was delivering the revelations. We'll go to the Quran, then we'll talk about Abdullah ibn Sar. We'll talk about a man named Al-Nadir. All right. So, how does the Quran describe the reaction of people who heard the Quran? So Muhammad is standing there, he's delivering revelations.
Yeah.
If anyone is going to be able to understand the full force of these revelations to determine whether they really are so amazing that they could only come from God, we should look to the reaction of the people during the time of Muhammad. Quran, and we find reports of their reaction in the Quran itself. So, Surah 625. This is important because if you read what Muslims say, Muslim arguments, they say, oh, the people just fell down.
Right.
I've actually read by Abu Allah Maududi, who said that the pagans had to run away holding their ears to keep themselves from hearing the amazing words of the Quran, because it would melt their hearts and they'd be forced to convert to Islam.
That's what Satan did. Except when he ran, he
That's
farted,
different, yes.
according to Sahih
According to the Hadith.
As soon as you're done, we're going to take another caller. So go ahead.
Right. So the Quran, 625. Of them there are some who pretend to listen to thee, but we have thrown veils on their hearts, so they understand it not, and deafness in their ears. If they saw every one of the signs, they will not believe in them, insomuch that when they come to thee, they but dispute with thee. The unbelievers say, these are nothing but tales of the ancients. Muhammad delivers his revelation, and the unbelievers say, what are you talking about? We know all this. We've heard all this before. Quran 8:31, when our signs are rehearsed to them, so when the revelations of the Quran are delivered to them, when our signs are rehearsed to them, they say, we have heard this before. If we wished, we could say words like these. These are nothing but tales of the ancients. So think about this, and you have many passages like this in the Quran. Muhammad delivers the Quran to the pagans, and the pagans say, what is this? What is this mess? We could do this. This is nothing.
Right.
And we know from Muslim historical works that this is exactly right. Let me tell you about a man named Al-Nadir. When Muhammad was in Mecca, and he would walk around delivering his revelations, a pagan named Al-Nadir would walk around too. And when Muhammad would stand up to give a revelation, Al-Nadir would stand up and give another story, and then he would challenge all the Muslims and say, in what way is this man's story better than mine?